thanks to our original deck creator, that is Connie Hennitz. And she is a volunteer management consultant. And she works not only with SCORE, but also with One SCORE that is in Cincinnati. So thank you, Connie, for getting this together. We have amended her slides just a bit, just to make it be in our flow. But thanks to Connie for our original presentation. So one of our speakers today is Art Helmstetter. He has a lot of experience in business. He also is really involved with nonprofit organizations. He's a nonprofit board president, and he also is a board advisor. And more importantly, right now, Art actually is our volunteer recruiting coordinator. So he is doing some of the same things that you are trying to do in with your organization as well. So we're going to have Art today. We also have Alan Schussheim, and Alan actually is our outreach coordinator for SCORE. So he is involved talking a lot with the other businesses, other partners that we can partner with in SCORE, and he has some exciting programs to tell you about today as part of volunteer love and volunteer management. Okay. Are there any questions? If not, just put in the chat, I'm ready to go, because we're getting ready to speed things up a bit. So are you ready to go? Let's see. Are you all putting something in chat for me or not? All right. Crystal says she's ready. Wayne says, will we receive these slides? Yes, you will, Wayne. Okay. And Anna, let's do it. Okay. So we got some excitement in the room. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to stop sharing a minute. Well, I guess I'm not going to stop right now, but in a minute. So doing this workshop, you're going to be able to first develop a strategic approach to volunteer management. We're going to help you look at the structure of your volunteer programs, and hey, everything always needs some kind of tweaking, no matter where it is. So we're going to look at that structure, and we're also going to help you try to implement some new tools so you can develop and sustain your volunteer core. Okay. Somehow we have a slight delay on our slides today. So Art, are you ready?
Yep. I'm going to share my slides then, Val, correct?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So are you ready on there now?
I am ready.
Okay.
See if it works. Okay, can you see my slide?
Yeah, Art, we can see your objective slide.
Yeah, your objective slides up.
Okay, well, the difficulty I have is, okay, very good. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm not used to Zoom. We did it during COVID, but we haven't done it for a while, so I apologize if I'm not polished, but that's the way it is. I just wanted to get my computer. Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Just type a chat, yes?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you okay, Art.
Okay, thanks. Very good. I had some background. All right. Well, I have been with SCORE for 14 years as volunteer. So I'm a highly qualified volunteer. And I've been pretty engaged in SCORE, and it's changed over the years. And I have been the really volunteer coordinator for the last 6 months. And I've learned a lot in that time, done a lot of reading, did a lot of background work. And the reason I did that is that I saw a gap at SCORE. SCORE is a nonprofit organization. It's national. We have 10,000 volunteers in the United States and 35 staff people to support us. That's a lot of volunteers. And I will tell you, it's a big organization. Therefore, everything we will present today is present at SCORE. We use Salesforce as our CRM. We have a great website. Again, we have staff that's supporting us on our onboarding and volunteer management. So it really, for a big organization, what we're going to go through fits. For smaller organizations, I think you need to design your system and prioritize depending on how many volunteers you have and how dependent you are on them. Obviously, SCORE is a volunteer organization, first and foremost. So, but the reason that I took the coordinator's job is that it doesn't always work for the volunteers. And what is missing is a little bit of the personal connection and not quite appreciating why different volunteers volunteer. So if there's one thing you take away from today, no matter how much of what we talk about you can actually implement or make sense for you to implement, I think you need to focus on understanding the why for your volunteers. And think first about yourself and why are you involved with the organization and what are the values and the passions that you have, because this is really about community. And you are serving your volunteers as much as your clients, and you need to give them fulfillment and uplift them. We're all doing this because we do have the passion, but you have to respect the people side. And I think that's no matter how big the organization or how small, that is a required platform. So if there's one thing you do, it's understand the why. I talked to a recruit yesterday. He's a board chair. He's got 40 years of working with nonprofits and fundraising, and he wanted to be a SCORE mentor. And I talked him out of it. The reason I talked him out of it wasn't really a fit for him to become a mentor. He wanted to speak. He wanted to do workshops. He's got an area of expertise. And I said, well, you be a speaker, but I don't think you want to deal with some of the other things that you would have to do as a SCORE mentor, which includes 9 online training sessions. And he's a grumpy old man like I am. And so in all honesty, and I've known him for years, and I just said, honestly, there's an easier way and a better way for you. So I think you have to, that is kind of a magic wand for success in your volunteer. They want to feel needed, wanted, affiliated with your organization. So bring that spirit to every encounter your volunteers. They're just every bit as important as your clients and your donors. That everyone is wanting to take something away from this that's not tangible. The slide that's got up there now on the left-hand side, that's me. This was a dinner we had last week, Thursday evening, to recognize our volunteers. And this is what we call our Superstar Spark Plug Award winner, Martha Taylor, one of our volunteers. So we try and get together every year and have an event where we just celebrate the contribution of all our volunteers. So that's the kickoff I would like to have. Again, I would suggest that you write down the things we talk about that you think apply to your organization, and then sit down with somebody and pick the top 3 and try and actualize them and start with one. This can be overwhelming, and I don't want to see you not get started just because you've drunk from the fire hose. So I would suggest that you do that and have a list here and just reflect on it when you get the slides, and if you go back through them or if you talk to somebody about it. But pick one item you're absolutely going to do, and obviously the why question in your encounters with volunteers is an easy one. So with that, we'll get started on. Okay. Just what is a volunteer? Just some baseline information. So it's people working in a public agency, in other words, not a private business, for humanitarian civic reasons, for aspirational society benefit, and without promise or receipt of compensation. So that's pretty standard. I think we all know it, but I just want to get the baseline set. And the corollary is that it's without pressure or coercion from any employer. So it's very distinctive from a business person or somebody who might even volunteer time in the business. It's very specific what we're talking about today. And back to the volunteer why, and why do volunteers volunteer? And I volunteer because I like to help people. I have a skill set that I think has value, and I pick where I volunteer. I'm only the board chair or on a board of one organization because I know I can't do everything else I want to do and participate regularly with board meetings. So we have to value our time and prioritize. And that's what volunteers do. And I'd like you to put your two hands out in front of you next to each other. And one is the value that you get from volunteering, and the other is the cost of volunteering. And volunteering has a cost because you're investing time in something you prioritize. And then you can move one hand higher. Your right hand is your fulfillment from volunteering in say score. That if that's higher than your left hand, that's a good thing. If it's lower, then you're not getting the fulfillment that you could be doing something else today. And we're all here today because we feel that there's value in this meeting, and hopefully you realize that. Um, but that's an easy way to kind of visualize that everybody has that equation when they come to your organization. They're coming for a reason because they have an expectation. And if that expectation is not met, they will leave pretty quickly. And I hate to say it, but we have a lot of people that come to SCORE and either don't get the training completed or leave during the first year. And it's because I don't think we've done a good enough job with the why. And something we've instituted now is that we have two people, existing mentors, interview all of our applicants. And I do that. And as I said, sometimes I recommend people maybe look somewhere else, and maybe another nonprofit that I know of can use their talents better and that they would find more fulfilling. So I use that, and it's just very, very powerful. I can't tell you enough. And these are just a few of the reasons and the values that you need to think about as you're talking to recruits or as you're designing your program of how you pay them fundamentally in psychological type of values.
Right. And Art, one thing that you highlighted, just to put it in different terms, head, hands, and heart, right? So volunteers usually volunteer with one or two or three things, right? Their head, right? Their skill set, their heart, they love the organization, and their hands, they want to give back. And I think a lot of organizations shy away from skill-based volunteers. Right. So, if you think about like a food bank, and the food bank wants volunteers to pack boxes, right? So it's their heart and their hands. But many organizations, maybe there's an accountant, maybe there's a lawyer, maybe there's someone with a technical skill. That's another area that people just, not all smaller nonprofits don't always go for the skill-based versus the unskill-based.
True that. And however, even very small nonprofits have a high skill-based volunteer need on their board. And you have to understand why the board members are coming. And as I said, their time generally has a high value to it. And what you need to do is understand that and make sure that the experience in your organization, especially if you're the executive director or a founder, is fulfilling to those people. They're no BS people. They're very efficiency oriented, and you have to deal with them with that paradigm. So every nonprofit organization in Ohio should have at least 3 volunteers represented by their board. So I don't know if you've thought of it that way, but you need to think of that exactly the same way in the context of what we're talking about today. Okay. Yeah, if you would, in the chat, put down a trait or traits that you want on your volunteer team. And we don't have to do a lot of this, but I just thought it would be a good time for you to put some things down and for us to talk about that as far as what qualities you want in your volunteers.
Okay, so we're waiting. We got what traits do you want on your volunteer team? Oh, so Alan's is passionate, outgoing,
Hmm.
willing to talk to anyone. Uh-oh, that sounds like something else you want them to do. Get more people in there. Be honest, commitment to the mission, trustworthy, dependable. Um, oh, well, somebody says not just one. I want them to be committed, passionate, and adaptable.
There you go. I
We
like that
want
one.
specific skills. We want a serving attitude. Let's see. Understanding, understanding the term of service, Wayne, or you said understanding the term service.
Understanding the
Like being a
term
servant
service.
leader, you're asking for?
Yeah, the idea of
Like
actually
a,
understanding what service means.
okay, right. So, all right. So understanding what actually service is. All right. Any other some great ones there, Art?
Good, good,
So
yeah.
what do you
And
think?
a lot of these are based on values. And I do a lot of strategic planning with nonprofits. And uh, I just did one a few weeks ago at a board retreat, and they wanted to revise their mission and vision. And we took a step back and I said, well, what are your organization values? And there was a myriad of definitions. And we took a
Mm,
whole page of values and we boiled it down to six. Hopefully, we can get it to around four. But there are core values in your organization that are embodied in these answers that you gave. And I think it's important that you establish them, get them in writing, and build your vision around them. Your vision should embody those values. And then that
right,
also filters down into your volunteers, your staff, your board. I think all of these attributes that people have spelled out, absolutely, we want it in our volunteers, but we want it to be the fabric of the organization.
right. Yeah.
Good.
Hey,
Yep.
actually, Anna gave you one more, which kind of goes with that. And also Jamie being open to differences and
Yep.
also non-judgmental and ethical. So
Yep.
getting some top ones there as well.
Yep.
All right.
A lot of things around honesty and forthright, and a lot around acceptance and things.
Okay.
Well, a very smart man in 2016, with a lot of research, came up with the uh, ideal virtues of a team member. Uh, and these are kind of funny terms, but I think they bring some of what we talked about. But humble is, to me, open to everyone. That no one is better than anyone else, and if you've got to take the garbage out, that's just something you do, and as part of your contribution. Hungry means ambitious. In other words, they've got energy. We want to make an impact. We want to drive change, and I think an attribute. And then smart, which means just capable. Um, and able to perform functions and be adaptable. So yeah, that's a good conversation, and I appreciate the input. But this value question, and in looking at your volunteers with a specific criteria uh, that embodies your organization is critical. Then you'll get alignment. Then they'll align with the mission and vision, and they'll understand why it is that way. All right. Well, we're going to get a little more mechanical here with the process and onboarding. Um, well, recruiting, onboarding, and retaining volunteers is very complicated. As I said, um, you may not need to do all these things, or you may do a light version of them. But this structure is one that's proven over time to be successful. And Connie came up with a mnemonic to help you remember it proper. So it's a proper process, if you want to look at it that way. And it starts with your preparation. And again, this does not have to be a big book, but some of these things are policies that you absolutely should have in your organization. And it's just a question of getting them all together and in one place. So when you are talking to um, candidates, you can walk through this and they can understand exactly what we're getting into or they're getting into. Down at the bottom, although it should be at the top, probably is the mission and vision. Again, that gets us back to those values we just talked about. And then ethics, the code of ethics, and that comes to that, those attributes of honesty. Uh, DEI is openness. So you've captured a few of these already, and it should be, again, formalized in your organization. You usually want to take pictures, so image release, um, and then insurance coverage. If there's any activities that would provide any kind of liability, you know, the volunteers need to know that. This is particularly true. Again, I come back to board members, that they need insurance coverage because they can be personally responsible for the liabilities of the organization, particularly financial liabilities. So board responsibility is fiduciary. So that's something that any good board member or any experienced board member is going to want to see for their particular functions. And then just what are the engagement policies? What's the supervisory structure? Sometimes it's just, you know, rotating who's supervising who, and not a good idea. And then specific job descriptions. So that again, people know the time commitment, the skill sets needed, if they need training or help with being able to execute the responsibilities. So again, it doesn't need to be huge, but get all these in one place. This also mirrors what would be a board manual typically with a few other things added to it. So it's something that you absolutely should have a board manual, and this would be a subset of that. The board manual,
Right.
you would also have financials and expectations for in the job description. So again, think of your board members as volunteers, and everything we say here applies to them as well.
And Arda, I guess on the volunteer handbook, another quickie is you don't have to start from scratch, right? You can search and reapply, copy, you know, so if you don't have something or if you want to expand. And for those of you that are familiar, or maybe if you're not, you can look it up. I mean, even, you know, the large language models, the artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, you know, you can actually go there and start it, you know, help me create, you know, what's the index of a volunteer handbook. It would shoot you some ideas. Don't just take it face value, but, you know, review it, or, you know, help me with job descriptions or structures. And you can actually probably crank one of these out pretty quickly with, you know, even ChatGPT from scratch, or you can find one and just search and reapply.
Great. Thanks, Alan. That's great
Yeah.
input.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then also like the size of it, it doesn't necessarily have to be this big um 35-page document, so it can be short as well. Actually, on the chat, we did ask a quick question, Art, if you want to look at that, or people can just look at it. Volunteer handbook, rate, what are you? One being what handbook? I have not even heard of that. And five being it is complete and we use it. So we want to give a little rating in there. Next time when we do this, we will do a poll, but right now it's going to have you just put it in chat real quick. So if you want to think about that, or as Art continues on. Okay.
All right. Good. Yes, I would be interested to see that. That's very good. Okay, and just some example jobs that you might have in a nonprofit organization, and obviously they cover the gamut. Some of these may be shared. One person may do 3 or 4 of them in a smaller organization, so that can be a little challenging. But this is the way it is. So the key is when you do have job descriptions that you actually define them. We talked about that, but their function, the time commitment, schedule, is it a one-time thing for 4 hours? Is weekly for 2 hours on Tuesdays? Where is it? What skills are required again? And if there's physical aspects, make sure that's clear. And who is the supervisor? So you should, any significant volunteer job that you have that is ongoing, you should get a detailed job description for it and make it available to the applicants. Okay. So the components of recruitment, again, with that job description to, put into a process, you have different kinds of assignments, and we have those kind of things. We have our normal volunteers, our mentors. Another aspect of that is presenters, such as we're doing today. And then there's people that need to work in the business. And by that's the administrative piece. And that, again, our staff is all centrally located nationally. So each chapter has its own administrative structure for recruiting coordinator, for treasurer, et cetera. So we have different roles. And a big one, again, back to the why question, is the impact of the volunteers on community good. And that is the heart of nonprofit organizations. And, I've seen some great impact reports. And I think you may need to make that clear to the volunteers. When we did our dinner, we talked about how many mentoring sessions we accomplished in the prior year, how many businesses started, how many jobs were created. So you want to have it very clear. Again, we said one of the attributes we want in our volunteers is passion, and ideally passion for your mission. So you have to put the results of that mission and how are you doing it. You've got outreach strategies. Alan's going to talk a lot about that, about how to get to people through various media and messages. Application procedure, as I said, our onboarding is a little complicated, and it can get a little off-putting, but depending on the situation you have, if you have people working with children or in sensitive situations, you need to may need to do background checks and vetting and screening. Okay, and yeah, and an individual deployment plan, so that people, again, have expectations, know what they want to do. Quite often, volunteers are either working in another job or retired and traveling, but we all live busy lives, and as I said, you have to weigh on what the return on your time investment is as a volunteer, and we all do it whether we're conscious of it or not. So I think more detail, the better, as far as people knowing exactly what they're getting into. And there's a saying in sales that says, get to know quickly. In other words, don't waste your time, don't waste a volunteer's time, because a frustrated volunteer may come out and somebody asks them how they did with volunteering at SCORE, and they say it's crappy. That's not what we want to be happening out there. You're better to be right up front with the person. So again, if you get to their whys, I think you get to filter through that.
And Art, on that last slide, just one other
Yep.
piece of information, hopefully another easy takeaway for everyone. No matter how big or how small you are, no matter how many volunteers you have or don't have, we just ran into a situation, no names, to protect the innocent, but a nonprofit that basically said they didn't need any more volunteers. So hopefully everyone on this call is of the same mindset of you never can have enough volunteers. And even if you don't have a place for them as of this minute, meeting with them, they have an interest in learning about your nonprofit, they approached you for a reason, letting them know you may not have even an opportunity for them this minute, but you may have it tomorrow. But we've had situations where people have actually said, we just don't even want any more volunteers, or we're not even interested in recruiting. You never know when a volunteer leaves and when a volunteer comes. So hopefully one takeaway is you're always recruiting for volunteers, right? No matter when.
Yeah, and I think, Alan, that probably stems from an attitude or a paradigm that volunteers do menial stuff and staff does the important stuff. And that can't be further from the truth. I'll go back to the board. The board does very important stuff and they're volunteers. And so, I think people need to open their mind a little bit about not putting walls up between staff functions and volunteer functions, because if you get the right volunteer, they may be able to really do a great job in accounting or finance or something and take some of the weight off of the treasurer, and then they could sit on the financial committee. So I think that's an excellent point. Thank you. Okay, so I think everybody has some experience, if you do volunteers, with different generations of volunteering. And I'm not going to get into this deeply, but there is a difference in certainly in age. And I think people are now coming to the conclusion that it's also based on experience. In other words, someone that's older has different life experiences and is a different place in their life where maybe, they're not going to school and raising kids and doing a job all at the same time, which is what I did in the middle of my career. So, once they get older, their attitudes change a little bit, their experience changes. So I don't want to say that Gen Zers someday are going to be the equivalent of baby boomers where they're that age, and we sometimes disparage different generations, and I think you have to be careful of that. It is really an experience factor, and not just a demographic factor. But obviously, a lot of hours put in by baby boomers, a little more time, kids are out of the family, job stresses generally are, you're on top of your career, you're experienced. So, and I think again, there's this change of attitude that, well, am I really making a difference in the world? And in the corporate world, I worked very hard and very long, and I didn't feel that way. Now in my volunteer work, I absolutely feel that way. I tell people I'm in my platinum years now. I skipped the golden years thing, and just am finding a lot of fulfillment in applying my skills and experience and wisdom, if you want to call it that, to people that appreciate it. And then in looking at the generations, and I just wanted to get this on your board so that there's an awareness to it. You can go online and there's an infinite amount of information about it, but you can see here, the percent volunteering, what their causes tend to be, and what their motivations are. So as you're looking at different age of people, millennials, I think, group activities, events, things like that, volunteering at the pancake breakfast where they can bring out a group of people. We have churches and we have different service organizations that come out as groups. A lot of people are doing that for the affiliation of the people that are like-minded to them. So I just stop for a second and ask if there's any thoughts or comments on the generational differences. We're not touching on it a lot, but I think as you're looking at your mission in your organization and the functions you're looking for the volunteers to perform and the characteristics of those jobs, taking this into account is important, because these people all get their information from different places.
Hey, so just take a minute. I think Art maybe wants us to kind of reflect on this a little bit. So who are your volunteers? Like, who do you count on most for your volunteering efforts? Baby boomers, Gen X, millennial, Gen Zers?
And Val, I think maybe one other question or thought for everyone
Mhm.
is, do each of your nonprofits target and customize your outreach, right,
Yes.
for the specific population? So Art was just highlighting they have different whys. They also have different percentages, that actually volunteer on a
Right.
regular basis. But, if you're targeting an outreach to baby boomers, it's going to be significantly different than if you target an outreach to Gen Z, or do you
Right.
do
Well,
that?
it should be,
It should
Alan,
be,
but I
or do
don't
you?
know that
Exactly.
necessarily happens.
Correct.
It
Exactly.
should be, but I don't know if that is always happening. So
True.
if I look back on my questions and I asked about the volunteer handbook, only one person responded. So only one out of all 15 got a manual. No, that was supposed to be a little funny, but only one out of 15. The rest of you have some manuals.
No,
So
may need to get to work.
I
Again,
know
doesn't
we
have to be
might need
big.
all to get to work. This workshop is well needed. So Jamie does say those currently Gen X and Boomers that she um, mostly relies on, and some Gen Zers, but who need volunteer hours. So like students who come in and need service hours for school.
Yeah,
So that kind of
maybe a
thing as
follow up
well.
for maybe a follow up for Jamie, if you want to come off mute for a second, just to have a discussion, is do you target them differently? So you basically said Gen X, Boomers, and some Gen Zs. Do you target them just with one message, or do you target them actually with targeted messaging for the different demographics?
A lot of our volunteers have been with the organization actually long before I started working there. I've been there about 2 years, and mostly helping out in our food pantry, doing sorting of the items on Monday. Tuesday they pack, and then Wednesday they do the distribution. And so we're kind of in flux right now as to how we want to add volunteers. We definitely do. We definitely could use some office volunteers. So, of course, we're looking at skill sets, who is really good at Excel and, some of the technology because, a couple of us are boomers ourselves and not as familiar with technology as we'd like to be. So, bringing some folks in, and they, of any age, there are a lot of boomers who are very good with technology. So, we're open to any age group, really. The Gen Z, we do have the ROTC at the high school in Bellbrook has been doing food drives for us every fall. They target a different area of the city for, one weekend and then another area of the city for another weekend. So they are extremely helpful in keeping our pantry stocked.
Super.
Great.
Okay, great.
And
So
Anna, go ahead, Bill.
well, finish, Alan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just saw a post from Anna as well about how to reach, practitioners and, to actually get them to volunteer since they're a clinic. So a lot of our recommendations for outreach sometimes is who knows who, right? 6 degrees of separation, LinkedIn and other tools. Sometimes you don't necessarily have the ability to market directly to, practitioners, doctors or nurses, or maybe you don't have that mechanism, but someone knows someone, right? Someone knows a nurse or someone knows a doctor. And a lot of times we actually don't utilize our volunteers to help us find other volunteers in a lot of situations like that.
Right. Oh, most definitely.
Excellent.
I think
Excellent.
she also says that challenge is recruiting those skilled individuals, which could be more of that direct ask to people,
Yep.
and maybe also people that's newly retired, or maybe they retired even early, but they still want to keep their skills going. So, since Sarah mentioned, I know being they use Gen X and millennials heavily, but she plans on recruiting at colleges and other people that she knows. So some good comments on that. And some people are just starting. So this is what this workshop is all about as well. Not only just where you are and you want to get better, but maybe you haven't started at all. So now you can just start out on the right track. So
Right. And
Great.
actually, one thing that we haven't highlighted that might be actionable for people as well is the tools and technologies you use to target these different audiences are different. So, for example, Facebook is geared more towards the older generation now, right? So the older demographics, while TikTok or any of those others, Twitter is in the middle, but Instagram and things like that are to the younger generation, or videos to the younger generation. If they can't see it in 3 to 5 seconds, they don't even pay attention to it, right? So even the tools and technologies you choose to do the outreach, depending upon who you're targeting. So
Right.
Good,
Okay.
good.
Well, let's
All
move
right,
along. Our
super. Good
time
conversation.
is winding up here soon.
Yep, yep. And that really segues into this slide. We've talked a lot about this, that bring a friend to an event, schools, colleges, community organizations, Rotary and things like that. Online platforms, which Alan will be talking about shortly. So yeah, and groups, school groups, interest groups like we talked about with the trails and the hikers. For instance, the Dayton hikers do trail maintenance and construction for the Spotted Turtle Trail for the Beaver Creek wetlands, which I'm a board advisor for. If you look at this boardwalk, the understructure was done by contractors, but all of these boards in here were done by volunteers, a significant amount by Dayton hikers. They like to hike, they need trails, and the organization provides trails. So they're doing a fundraiser tomorrow morning if anybody wants to go over to Rotary Park in Beaver Creek and grab some pancakes and see the trail. It's a really fun event, and it's at Rotary Park in Beaver Creek. But anyhow, paid political announcement there. But this is the type of thing that you can do if you can get an affiliated group. So think about people that are in your space, maybe even professional organizations, where there might be a group of people who that's what they value in life. And it just takes one person to organize a work group for either an organization or a company.
right. And we were talking about doctors and nurses with the clinic before. Think about Doctors Without Borders, right? Doctors Without Borders and other nonprofits like that, right? They have to target those specialty type of skilled resources.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, there's some specialty areas like that that are good. Couple of platforms that are available. Volunteer Match. We do use it. It's national, but it does come down to local level. And I get an email of 8 opportunities every week for volunteering. So they have a push strategy there, and it's free. There is a paid version. It is connected to LinkedIn, so it can reach a lot of people that way. And then Serve Ohio is a state-based thing. It's kind of linked to AmeriCorps, but really it's kind of just links to United Way and to our Dayton Serve platform. So there's some local listings, but very few. Alan actually set up Dayton Serves for us. There's a philanthropist that developed it in Cincinnati, and he allows us to use it for free. And Alan will get into more of that. It's very locally focused in the 11 counties around Dayton. The links go right to nonprofit sites. We promote it locally with our Google Ads grant, which we talked about in our marketing workshop. And we spend about $1,500 a month on that. And Alan will show you the details on it when we get to that point. And this is a volunteer match listing. We've got a variety of things here. I use it more to get non-mentor volunteers. The first one is for mentors, but the next one's for event and workshop coordinators, which we need many of. One's for nonprofits specifically. And so, you can use this for back office. It's free, again, paid version, pro version. You can start with the free one, and we get a couple of volunteers a month out of that. And it does link to social media through Facebook and I think LinkedIn, so you can get some social media reach out as well. Serve Ohio is, again, kind of linked to AmeriCorps. It has how it started, but they extended it to other organizations too. And as you can see here, like in Greene County, there's only 3 individual listings for organizations. And it really just links to the United Way of Dayton and Dayton Serves. Same thing, Miami County, very few. Montgomery County, a few more. But the state one, I don't necessarily worry about. We don't do anything with it other than have our name there as the link. So that wraps up my portion of this discussion of kind of the strategy of recruiting and onboarding people, volunteers. So if anybody's got any questions, we will take those. Otherwise, I will unshare and Alan will pick up from here.
All right. So any questions? Other comments? Sarah did reach out and said that people are moving away from X or Twitter, the old name. Instagram and TikTok are popular now. So Sarah has had that experience. She works more with college students. So I think you have to determine what your experience is and what your people want to see and go from there and make that happen. Okay, any other comments on recruiting? Remember that that saying we're using proper process for our volunteers. So we did the first 2, I think, right? Preparation and recruitment. All right. So Alan?
Sure. Thank you, Val.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Somebody
that's
did have a
okay.
question. Do you recommend a volunteer in service in addition to a volunteer recognition? Jamie, I'm not quite sure. Do you all answer that? Jamie, you can come on if you want.
Yeah, so, I worked in another position. I'm actually retired from a position I held for 30 years. And we heavily used volunteers. And so each year we would have an in-service and a volunteer recognition separate from each other.
Got you.
And so I think, just to kind of keep the volunteers updated, more than just, what you might do throughout the year, kind of recommitting them if they're staying on to the mission and so on and so forth.
Right. Got
Not
it.
necessarily make it a drag to come, but, providing them information and so forth. And then, maybe have some kind of a fun event to wrap it up, some.
Right. Got you. Okay, so like an in-service training event
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
and
we'll talk
recognition.
about
I
that.
like doing both, but I'm sure
Yeah.
Alan's going to talk a little bit more
Okay.
about that. I think you need to do both things. So,
Okay. I jumped ahead.
No.
okay,
We
no
we
problem.
love that. Not a problem.
All right.
And
Thank
what
you.
we're sharing right now, just as a quick overview, is the DaytonServes.org site. So for any of you that have never heard of us, feel free to go out, DaytonServes.org. Over 400 nonprofits in the Miami Valley, the 11 counties around Montgomery County are listed. And really, this whole site is intended to try to connect the community and volunteers in the community with nonprofits that need the volunteers. So like I said, we have 400 plus nonprofits already listed. My favorite example is I think we have 5 or 6 equestrian programs. Most people don't even know that there's more than 1 or 2, or they've only heard about a couple of horse programs. If you're not sure if you're in our DaytonServes.org, we've actually put many of your organizations in and notified your organizations, but you can search on your respective organizations. Okay. It's free for everyone. It's a great resource. And really our focus, just on this organizational listing example, our focus is building relationships. So unlike some other volunteer applications, which are all about, okay, we have a specific job, like Catch a Fire or some different sites, we're trying to educate people about your nonprofit, what your mission is, and how they can get involved. So we're trying to build that relationship. And then we just forward the volunteers. If you notice, we forward them directly to you. So we're not trying to become the middle layer or get in the middle. We provide phone numbers, we provide websites, and we forward people to your respective organizations. So some of you may have received emails or phone calls from me saying that we actually had someone that was interested in volunteering for your organization, but we haven't been able to connect. So that's just a little example of what one of our sites looks like. Okay. To give you an idea, we use Google Ads. You may have heard about it. Art mentioned $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month is not actual cash spend. It's actually Google fund money or Google free money. So Google gives you upwards of $10,000 of Google dollars, Google cash a month. But hopefully what this gives you an idea of is we actually now have the ability to get statistics and data of who's going to DaytonServes.org, our volunteer portal. This is for the last 12 months. So it gives you an idea of tens of thousands of people over the last year have, if you look, have actually visited our site. I think what's more important to us is not just people that have visited, we also like new and active users. So you can see that we have people that have never seen us before, but we also have people that are coming back. Okay. And then finally down here, conversions and conversion rate, that's really important for us, including events per session. Are the people coming to us and clicking around and looking and reading, and how many of them are actually, clicking all the way through to the nonprofit, or how many people are clicking that they're interested in asking for information. And then finally, our conversion rate, or what Google likes to call the click-through rate. Our click-through rate is, basically 1 in 4 people do something, take action when they go to our website, either ask for more information or click onto the website of the nonprofit that they're looking at. Google actually expects that number is, I think it's anywhere between 5 and 10%, a minimum of 5 to 10%, and we're at 25%. So all the 400 nonprofits that are listed on our website, actually a large percentage of the people coming through actually look in depth and try to find information about their specific nonprofits. This just gives you an idea of the top 5 from the number of views and conversions for our website. And 4 out of 5 are probably not going to be surprising because they're animal related, right? 4 Paws for Ability, Pet Advocates, and so on and so forth. 6 but this kind of gives you an idea that, over 1,000 people over the last 12 months looked at our site with regards to pet advocates, and 50% of them did something. 50% of them clicked through, wanted more information, or clicked onto the website of that respective nonprofit. And then we have the Agency on Aging. All these statistics are enabled because we actually have Google Ads turned on. We don't recommend implementing Google Ads without actually planning, making sure your website is configured correctly, making sure your marketing plans are up to speed. But just if you aren't familiar with Google Ads, this kind of gives you an idea of some of the information that you can get. With regards to Dayton Serves, like I said, if you're not familiar with it, if you're not sure if you're there, search for your nonprofit and see. You can actually take ownership of your posting for free and update it. Pretty basic requirements. You have to be a 501c. You have to be in one of the 13 counties surrounding Dayton. We need an email or a phone number, which makes it obvious, right? We want people to be able to contact you. One thing that a lot of organizations are surprised about is we want pictures. We want to build relationships, and nothing better than a picture, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So we want pictures to actually post on our website to actually show people what volunteering looks like. The last one is difficult for some nonprofits, a website. It doesn't have to be a big website, just a single page. We just need to be able to point to a website that is the requirement of the nonprofit that is actually allowing us to run on their platform, which is called Inspiring Service. And we're actually even working with some organizations to see if we can help nonprofits that don't have websites. Maybe you just have a Facebook site, and we'll actually help build the website for free for you, right? So SCORE can help. We can help with Google Ads, at least with education on Google Ads. We're trying to find nonprofits or different organizations that will do pro bono work for websites, website development for nonprofits. Many food pantries, for example, don't have websites. If you want any more information, if you want to be added to Dayton Serves, if you want to become an admin on Dayton Serves, if you're already there, really easily, you just have to email us at daytonserves@gmail.com. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about Dayton Serves? I think I haven't noticed every organization, but I know many organizations on this call are already listed in our website as of today. Okay. So just shoot us an email if you'd like to get added. It's another just free resource for you. We wanted to shift gears a little bit with regards to some tools and technology, and something that maybe nonprofits don't think about very often. Your website. Okay, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the live website for Beaver Creek Wetlands, which is the example that we're doing. The one thing that I'd like to ask everyone, this is another simple takeaway that Art shared, maybe, a few, 1, 2, or 3 takeaways from this webinar that you might be able to do, eat a low-hanging fruit. What I would say is, how many of you have taken a look at your website lately with the eye of someone that knows nothing about your organization? Or maybe have you asked someone that knows nothing about your organization to take a look at your website and to give you feedback? Why do I say that? Because nowadays everyone's attention span is so short that literally if you don't catch someone's attention with your website within a few seconds, they will leave your website. So a few things that we'd like to highlight here is, when you come to the Beaver Creek Wetlands website as an example, you know what that organization is about. Okay, preserving our wetlands, protecting our future. Without even looking, right on the first main page, you know what it's all about. The other thing that's really important, and don't think it's common, and I bet you many of your organizations may not have this, volunteering right across the main page. You don't have to look for it. It actually is right there, and I don't have to search for it. I can share horror stories with you where we've actually had nonprofits where the place where you would find information about volunteering was actually under employment. Okay. And, whether or not people are even going to look there, or nonprofits that don't even have a button for volunteering because they either assume people know that they need volunteers or know how to volunteer for their organization. If you have a new person that's interested in volunteering and there's not an easy way for them to volunteer or know how to volunteer, you're going to lose them before you even have a chance to encourage them to join your organization. One last thing I wanted to say on this main page is the other thing that's really important is connecting all of your different tools that you use. So that people can actually get to your Twitter account, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Instagram, so they can actually communicate with you, your email address, they can communicate with you. They're all linked together. Okay. So that's something that's really important. But what I wanted to show is, in addition to volunteering, another thing that's really important, and I'm just going to click through into volunteering with Beaver Creek Wetlands, is how to volunteer or what types of volunteering opportunities there are. Okay. So another thing that's really important is maybe, if you look across the top, business or organizations, if a business or organization wants to volunteer, they don't always know that they can volunteer, or they don't know that there are volunteer opportunities for them. So different types of volunteering, thank you note writing. So now I know I want to volunteer for Beaver Creek Wetlands. I click on it, but I want to look at what types of opportunities there are to volunteer. Many nonprofit organizations have volunteer. You click on the volunteer and it basically says fill out the form to volunteer, but it never gives you any background on what type of volunteer opportunities there are. So that's just another area that I think is really important for nonprofits, is sharing as much information in as few clicks as possible to actually educate the people that are looking at your site, and really get them interested in volunteering as quickly as possible, right? Because if they look at your site and they don't find something right away and they leave their site, the chances of them coming back is pretty low. And then finally, of course, a volunteer sign up right here. I don't even have to think about it. I can sign up right here, click on the volunteer, and I even have the volunteer interest down here. So a good review of your website and having people that don't know your website, having people of different ages take a look at your website is something that's really beneficial and important. And it's also something that's really low-hanging fruit from that standpoint. It doesn't take a lot of time and energy from that standpoint, and you can do it today, tomorrow. Okay, so this is the example of the Beaver Creek page of what types of volunteer opportunities they have. So are there any questions?
Sure.
We wanted to highlight something really easy for you to do about websites. Are there any questions about websites? Have you actually looked at your website, or have people look at your website that maybe don't know anything about your organization?
Hey, Alan, I think too great information on the website, but I think we also still don't forget about the human touch
Sure.
and reach out and touch those people who have visited the website, who even signed up. Just go back and make a phone call to them as well. So It
Oh, I
takes
think
a
yeah, that's
little
great.
extra time to do that. But sometimes we get on the web, it's so easy and it's just the paperwork. But sometimes just that human connection can make me, yes, I want to come volunteer.
And Val,
So,
I think that's great because that highlights something that we see in SCORE and we see in other areas on Dayton Serves as well. There are a
mhm,
lot of times when we forward information to nonprofits that someone's interested in volunteering for the organization and weeks go by. If weeks go by and someone was interested in volunteering for you, we can come up with lots of excuses like we're all volunteers, we don't have a lot of time, we don't have a lot of energy. But if someone takes the time to express that they're interested in volunteering for you, if you don't communicate with them or get in contact with them pretty quickly, the chances of you convincing them to join your organization or volunteer for your organization exponentially decreases. So that's
right.
something maybe to think about, just to highlight what Vel was saying about the human touch. Yeah, too many times people tell me when I'm sharing with them on Dayton Serves, it's like, hey, we sent you something 3 weeks ago and no one's reached out to this person who was interested in volunteering. And they come back and say, well, we're volunteers and we don't have time. I'm like, well, you just probably lost an opportunity of getting another volunteer who may have made your life easier. So
Right.
that's something you just have to be careful about.
Alan, there's another activity that the wetlands does, and that is in the early spring, March, when everybody's snowed in and not hiking trails. They have a pancake breakfast for volunteering, and they turn out typically about 50 people. They go to their whole mailing list and stakeholders, and
Yeah.
they've got stations with people that do the trails. There's bluebird monitoring, again, all the different functions. But again, it's that personal touch of talking to the people that are out there doing it today and connecting with them to see who you align with. It's a very
Oh,
nice
yeah.
event. I don't know too many other organizations that
Right.
actually have that kind of event for recruiting.
Yeah, so it's all food for thought to think of these different ways to connect and
Right.
not just go to the website. I think I always think when people say like, oh, well, tell me about such and such. It says on our website, you can go there. Like, oh my gosh, I that just really turns me off. So like show it to me, send it to me in another email or text it to me or something. So make it easy, like less friction, you can get more volunteers. All right,
Exactly.
let's
So now,
move along.
yeah, so now we're
So
back
you're
to
ready
the,
now?
yeah, we're back to proper, right? So everyone should
Okay.
be saying proper. So we talked about preparation, recruitment, onboarding and placement. We're going to talk about onboarding and placement together. So really the onboarding, the one thing that we'd ask is, and we talked about this a little bit before when we were talking about volunteer handbooks, how many of you actually have even onboarding handbooks or onboarding processes for volunteers, orientations to at least introduce the volunteers to your organization. The second point, learning about their motivations, right? It's important to understand why the people are motivating. Art just mentioned the socializing and the connections
Mm-hmm.
with the Beaver Creek wetlands. So one of the things that we want people to think about as well is just because someone says that they want to volunteer, there is still action required, right? And not just calling them in to say pack boxes or to write letters or to mow the lawn or to whatever that volunteer wants to do, but really make sure that they understand your organization, your mission, your impact, your vision, and what they're all about, because they're going to be representing your organization. So we want people to think about onboarding, whether or not you have onboarding processes. Placement, we don't have a slide specifically with placement, but placement is more along the lines of, what are their skill sets, maybe what are their needs. Different people have different needs, different people have different capabilities, right? Some people may be able to do physical labor. Some people may not be able to do physical labor, the DEI, all those types of things that thinking about when you're placing someone. Not everyone should be placed in the same place, in the same function, doing the same work, depending upon what their skills and what their needs are. So hopefully what we're saying on this topic of onboarding and placement is making sure that you've actually thought about that formalized process and that it's an ongoing process, that it's not just one and done. We have training. One example, we actually have Art and I belong to One Source Center for Nonprofit Excellence, which Connie Hinnitz, who was our original presenter. There's ongoing trainings that are associated with that. With SCORE, we hold ongoing training sessions as well, just to keep people interested and up to date. So those are some things, at least from a volunteer management side, that maybe not everyone thinks about. All right. So onboarding, placement, evaluation is an interesting one. But one of the questions we would also ask and have everyone think about is how many of you actually have any type of formalized evaluation and feedback process for your volunteers? As Art mentioned, different people volunteer for different reasons. Their why, why they volunteer, and actually giving feedback. Number one, giving feedback to the volunteers as to, how you've helped and how you've tied to the mission and the vision of the organization. Giving feedback, both positive in most cases, but unfortunately sometimes negative, right? Or constructive criticism, constructive feedback on people that may not be doing things the way that you're hoping that they can do, areas of improvement. But having a formalized evaluation and feedback process is critical. Okay. One thing that you might be able to do as a low-hanging fruit and easy after this session is one of the things that we find is a lot of organizations don't ask their volunteers how they like to be recognized. Okay, so from a feedback perspective, not everyone likes to be recognized the same way. Art showed a picture of Martha receiving the Spark Plug Award on the front slide. Some people are introverts. Some people really don't like being called up in front of people. So, if Martha was an introvert, which she is not, but if Martha was an introvert and didn't like to, be called up in front of people and getting acknowledged, that may not have been a very positive experience for Martha. So one of the things that I find in a lot of organizations are that we assume people like to receive, certificates or swag or be called up or food. Everyone has their differences. And one personal example that I'll share with everyone, I'm a volunteer for the Red Cross Disasters Services as well as with SCORE. And I've shared with the Red Cross, there's no need for you to send me, handwritten thank you notes from people that I may not know personally, to thank me for volunteering, because you can save your money and it doesn't really do much for me. Okay, that's just me, right? That's just me. When I get those letters, I just wish they would save their money and save their time, because it's not something that I really recognize much from a feedback perspective. So different people recognize different things. Some other people would love to receive a handwritten letter, thanking you for participating. So again, it just depends upon your volunteer and how they like to be recognized. And on the evaluation side, it's critical to have evaluations, because sometimes you may unfortunately have to well, let's look at the positive. On a positive side, from an evaluation standpoint, you might find the up-and-comers, the superstars, the spark plugs in the organization from evaluations that you might not have known about, and you want to, quote unquote, promote them or get them to take on more responsibility from a volunteer standpoint. So there's positive. From a negative standpoint, sometimes you may want to ask someone, or you may have to ask someone to leave and no longer be a volunteer. Maybe they've broken some of your ethics policies, or something in your book, but you need to have some data and some track record and some objective way of doing that, so that you don't get yourself into problems, whether it's legal or just conflicts. So just evaluations, even if it's just simple evaluations and feedback from that standpoint, it's just something that to think about that is not very common across many small nonprofits. It's definitely not common in that area. And please feel free to ask questions on any of these topics. Recognition, we talked about recognition a little bit. I kind of viewed that as part of the feedback, but there's lots of different ways to recognize, right? And however each individual likes to be recognized, however the organization likes to recognize, there's just lots of different choices and options. Get creative. All I would say on the recognition slide is, please don't think there's one size fits all, right? Please don't think that, a letter to an employer, some people might love that, and some people might cringe that and say, please don't write to my employer. So these are just things just to consider when you're thinking about how to provide that feedback loop. How do you provide that recognition to the volunteers? And it's really critical to do that, to make them feel like what they're doing is adding value. I think a lot of times the nonprofits assume that volunteers know that they're adding value and that nonprofits are doing a good job, but making it personal. So let's use a food pantry, for example. Packing a box of food is great, I think that's great. And a lot of people get a lot of satisfaction out of packing the box of food, but learning about the families that are receiving the food and learning about the good that that's done and the help that that's done, personalizing it, I think for a lot of people might be some very valuable feedback and valuable recognition. You know, thank you for packing all these boxes. Let us, you know, give you some stories about how this has helped people get out of poverty, or people, you know, feed their family when they weren't able to do so. So there's just lots of different ways to do that. We just encourage you all to be creative in that regard. Okay, so we've talked about proper preparation, recruitment, onboarding, placement, evaluation, and recognition. Hopefully what you can take away is it's not drinking from a fire hose like Art was talking about, but now you have, you know, these 6 different categories of topics. Okay, these 6 different areas of work within volunteer management that you can pick which ones are the low-hanging fruit or the highest value for you, and start working on areas that you think need improvement, or, you know, or adding to areas that with new ideas that we've provided to you. But maybe now you have some kind of at least layout, some mnemonic that will help you move forward with this, to help you improve your volunteer management moving forward. So we wanted an lastly on this, we just wanted to mention the volunteer charter. We've talked about the board handbook. We talked about the onboarding and the volunteer handbook, and just the idea of a volunteer charter. Really laying out roles and responsibilities, evaluations, rewards, and sanctions. If you have a volunteer charter, you can actually lay this all out in black and white for your volunteers. Different organizations may even have you sign the volunteer charter, acknowledging that you read it and you understand the expectations. You know, you might even have references in sexual harassment or different things like that within your volunteer charter. And by signing that document, people are acknowledging that they're adhering to your policies and procedures and your roles and responsibilities, however your organization likes to lay them out. So that's another area that might be helpful that some nonprofits may not have thought about. Okay. Now that we've talked about proper, we wanted to give you a couple of ideas on maybe some other tools and technologies that you might want to think about. Art shared some things like Volunteer Match and some volunteer tools. We mentioned DaytonServes.org. We wanted to mention the topic of volunteer management software. This is a rhetorical question. Feel free to chime in if you'd like, but I would venture to guess that many of our small nonprofits are probably still using Excel spreadsheets. Okay, and maybe some of you might not even be using Excel spreadsheets, but our comment to you is that in order to grow, in order to improve on your volunteer management functionality, you really need something more than just an Excel spreadsheet. It just isn't powerful enough. It's too cumbersome in many cases. So we wanted to share with you some ideas of volunteer management software. Salesforce.org. If you haven't heard about it, take a look at that. Many small nonprofits don't think that that's valuable for them because they either can't afford it or it's too complicated. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can get it for free forever, including software support. And actually, we've started a whole mission in SCORE and outside of SCORE to try to help small nonprofits roll out Salesforce, because Salesforce is used by all the big nonprofits and the big for-profits, and it has so much power that it can bring to nonprofits that we can spend a whole session just talking about that. Init Live, Civic Champs, there are different tools for volunteer management. The one thing I would say is a lot of nonprofits actually choose lots of different software packages. They choose a fundraising management package. They choose a volunteer management package. They choose lots of different tools and technology. We recommend you try to choose one tool that can do a lot of different things like a Salesforce to help you. So things that Salesforce, as an example, or a volunteer management tool might be able to help you do. These are some ideas. But the example I use are, how many of you have ever had different Excel spreadsheets for different fiscal years with different people's names on it, and you've tried to compare those names, Alan Schussheim in 2025 or 2024 to Alan Schussheim in 2023, and someone spelled my name wrong, and you spend hours and hours trying to reconcile the data to see who's volunteering for you. That's the downside of an Excel spreadsheet. But a database or a volunteer management software tool, like we've mentioned a few of those, can help you improve that. I've had a nonprofit executive director who said they spent hundreds of hours trying to do something, and we helped them roll out a volunteer management tool, and it went to minutes. So they actually saved hundreds of hours literally on an annualized basis by rolling out a volunteer management tool. So we just wanted to share that with you. This is an example. SCORE actually uses a volunteer management tool. We use Salesforce. SCORE National uses Salesforce. This is an example. We can run this report in 2 seconds, literally by pushing a button. It's the volunteer name. It's how many clients they've mentored. Okay, long-term clients, how many sessions, how many mentoring hours. This report actually is a single button push and runs in a few seconds for us using Salesforce. I'm not saying you technically can't run this within an Excel spreadsheet, but I doubt many people have something. This is 2 or 3 or 4 different topics in one report to run effectively, to give you answers, to help you run your volunteer management operations more effectively. Okay. What I wanted to share with everyone is SCORE has partnered with Sinclair, with Sinclair, and we're actually trying to run our first cohort. We're trying to find a way to actually get Salesforce. We know how to get Salesforce into the hands of nonprofits for free, but we wanted to find a way of actually providing training for free. So if you haven't heard about this, Sinclair Workforce Development, we're in the final stages of setting up our first cohort of nonprofits, which if it all works out well, the state of Ohio will actually provide funding for training. Salesforce will give them Salesforce for free. And now the nonprofits through Sinclair Workforce Development will be able to get training and the software for free and get the tools that the big nonprofits actually have. So if you're not familiar with this, please look this up. It's on their website, the Workforce Development website, and there's a link on this page as well. Okay. That's what we wanted to share with you. We have a few minutes opened for question and answers on any of the topics. So if anyone wants to unmute themselves and we can actually have a dialogue on any of the topics that you might want to dig into a little bit deeper, or any questions that you may have.
All right, let's give our presenters a round of applause. You can do it by putting your hand up or unsizing. Yay!
So what we're hoping is you may have some questions, or you may want to
Right.
dig deeper on any of the topics that we've shared. We'd be more than happy to answer or dig deeper on any topics that we've covered in this session.
Okay, so any questions? I think Alan asked you guys about your software. Are you using anything with your software? Nope. I guess you're all using Word documents. Okay.
Google Docs
So
is
not even
free.
Excel.
Yeah, I see someone just mentioned Google is
Oh,
free and
somebody
Google
said
Docs are
Excel.
free.
Okay.
And Google
Google, yeah.
Docs, yeah, they're free, but Google doesn't provide like a full-blown database application. So I mean, unless you're going to
Right.
build it from scratch, you'd end up with Google Sheets, which is
Right.
like Excel. So yes, but
Right.
correct. We use
Yeah.
Google Docs for free and SCORE as well.
Yeah. Even if you just start out with something really simple, it's good. Have you used that Monday.com at all?
Yeah, sure. There
Yeah.
are lots
So
of
I mean,
different
like,
tools. Yep.
yeah, so there are different tools that you could use that might be free
Yep.
as well. So just check those out too.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? Just a few more minutes. You guys are to be commended. All of you stayed on the call the entire time. Thank you so much. So this must be a big interest to each and every one of you. So we really appreciate that. Now somebody had to drop off just to show me up. All right. It is almost time now. Alan, did you have you want to go to the next slide, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Those are some of the resources. And those will be in the slide deck that you will receive. We will be sending out to you in a little bit. So just make sure you look at that. And we also want to thank our sponsor, Right Pack Credit Union, actually sponsors our nonprofit webinars and other events we have for businesses, both profit and for profit. So we give a round of applause to them as well for their support throughout the year. So and they have some great business resources for your business, nonprofit or for profit. And so check them with banking, different resources. You can get thing on for that. There's also $1,000 account they have now. If you put $1,000 in, you actually get a 7% interest, but it's only the $1,000. Then everything else gets a little bit less.
And
So,
Vel, I think you covered SCORE at the beginning, but a lot of nonprofits maybe don't think about getting SCORE mentors. So actually the
mhm,
SCORE chapter in Dayton, not all SCORE
mhm,
chapters nationally, but the SCORE chapter in Dayton supports nonprofits, not only via these presentations, but from a mentoring standpoint as well. So
mhm.
we have the QR code and our website that if anyone wants SCORE assistance in actually in any topic, feel free to reach out to us, just like a for-profit would. You can reach out to us on any of the topics that nonprofits are interested in.
Right. For sure. All right. That is it. You want to stop sharing your screen?
I will stop sharing. There we go.
Oh, right on
All right.
time. How about that?
I know we're on time. So
Who
thank
would
you
have
again
thunk?
so much. I actually am going to stop the